Hey guys, this is going to be my review of episode 4 of the BBC drama series Vigil, so I will be going into full spoilers as always from the start. And I'm not going to keep complaining about the flashback scenes because clearly at this point they're going to be in each episode in one way or the other, and it'll just get repetitive. Needless to say, I'm still not into them. I still don't see their purpose, and yeah, they don't do it for me. But just to say, in this episode, the flashbacks are of Amy and of Kirsten in the past. So it shows you them meeting for the first time, and it shows you them at the beginning of their relationship, so to speak. It also shows you them kind of breaking up and or having a fight, that sort of thing. So those are the flashbacks in the episode. And the two plots actually are quite evenly weighted in this. You do get a lot from the Kirsten side of the plot, as you get some pretty meaty developments on her side, on the land side, as well as obviously stuff going on Vigil. And I'll say this episode was better for me than the last one. I think because we are starting to get into some of the meat of the case. And I will say, at least on the Kirsten side of the plot, there was some pretty intriguing, meaty stuff happening. Maybe not as much on the Amy side. For me, I actually preferred the stuff going on with Kirsten in this episode. So I'll pick up with that first of all. So obviously, at the end of the last episode, she was like, she was being followed, and it was kind of led you to believe that it was someone who was kind of probably from the Navy side, maybe interested in, maybe taking her out, sorry. But it turned out to be MI5 who says, you better come with us. And in this episode, we pick it up and they're just sort of grilling her about her involvement in the whole Navy thing and the Vigil case. And in a way, we don't get a lot out of the scene. Like Kirsten's superior sort of comes to her rescue at one point, and we just hear that MI5 have been like monitoring the Navy and monitoring the Vigil case for quite a while, and that they also have kind of ties to like a protest that took place that it turns out that Jade was at. So it's through this later on that Kirsten finds out that Jade was at this protest, and they're looking at like a video of it, and they sort of spot this suspicious looking guy who's like keeping tabs on her, watching her, and it's obviously suspicion about what happened to her. So they arrest the guy, and I mean he's actually quite a sleazy looking sort of character, but in quite an entertaining sort of way. He does have quite a funny sort of line, because at one point when he's being questioned, the MI5 people come to like intercept and says, you've got to let him go, basically. And he sort of just smiles and says, well, this is fun. This was fun. Because but he does have that slimy sort of manner about him where you're kind of hoping that then he's going to get his comeuppance. But in any case, we don't get that much out of the scene. They're just being questioned, and he doesn't really say much. I mean, in a way, he might as well be saying no comment, but he just doesn't say much. Claims he doesn't really know Jade, that kind of thing. But in the end, we find out that he's a Russian spy. And unfortunately, he has diplomatic immunity. So even though Kirsten is pretty sure then he's the one who had Jade killed, she can't arrest him because of his diplomatic immunity. They have to let him walk. And the other side of things is then also he appears to be the one who attacked Kirsten in a house, because he has like a wound on him when they arrest him, and that appears to be from the scissors that Kirsten used to like defend herself. And that sort of makes her think, yeah, this was the guy who tried to have me killed. So they find out he's a Russian spy, and they later find out through looking like on this like website and this sort of coded sort of phishing like messages he's been sending, that he's been contacting someone else on Vigil. So that leads them to believe that there's a Russian spy somewhere on Vigil that might be causing all these like sort of issues. And yeah, that's sort of what comes out of it. And it's also like which we already know, this is like second-hand information, but the police later find out then it was like the Americans who attacked that other submarine. It wasn't the Russians. But it turns out that the Americans like owned up to this and said they've been tracking the Russians. So that's part of the whole thing. And again, I've said previously, I'm maybe not as keen on them using like real life politics, unless they're gonna, it's done in quite an original or exciting way. Some of this does feel like kind of been there, done that, but I guess at the very least it does add some intrigue to the case and what's going on in the drama. So obviously they have to let this guy go, but then getting more into the politics of it, they sort of have a meeting with like a minister, and they get her up to speed, and Kirsten is pushing for her to call Vigil and call it home. And the minister, being very typically political, diplomatic, is kind of saying, well, we've got this big vote coming up on Trident in Parliament, and is this really the right time to call them back? And in the end, they make the decision to call them back. But how convenient it is then when they contact Vigil, they can't get through because the systems have all been knocked out, and because there's been like another sort of attack or another sort of like malfunction on the submarine. So that's why the systems are down and they can't actually contact them. Now, obviously, this being the sort of show it is, that could still turn out to be, then there's a little more to that, but it's just a little bit more too convenient than that happened at that time, so they couldn't like contact them. And yeah, that's the stuff with Kirsten really, which is pretty good stuff. I did like quite a bit of that stuff. As I said before, I'm not so keen on the stuff with Amy. Now, one of the things, because it's sort of at the start of the episode where they actually had a drill, like just like a mock-up of if they were attacked, and Amy kind of goes berserk. She really gets, stressed out. And to be fair, at the time, this felt like a cheap fake out. But to be fair, it does lead somewhere later, because it's sort of later on the captain confronts her about her like medical condition and about her medication. And again, Amy's being like very paranoid. She's like, well, because the coxswain claims you told me about this, and she's like, no, I never told you. And then it's sort of quite well done because as a viewer you sort of start questioning, well, when could they have found this out, sort of thing. So actually that scene does sort of pay off. There's also stuff where she confronts the coxswain about the affair with the doctor, with Doherty, and because she says, well, this sort of gives you motive to have like killed Burke, and obviously he gets all defensive, and I didn't really like that scene because I thought it was very over the top. Like his acting in the scene was very over the top, but things obviously build to this point where the captain, I think it's Newsom. Yeah, Newsom, I'm pretty sure his name is, decides because of her condition, that being Amy, that he's going to confine her to like quarters, to like his cabin, until she can prove like she's mentally fit. And I guess he sort of stretches credibility because she mentions, well, you don't have the authority to do this. And I'm on her side on that because I'm pretty sure because she's like conducting an investigation on behalf of the police, then just because she's on his ship and he's the captain, I don't think he would actually have. But I guess it's one of those things where he's just like using the fact he is the captain and sort of pushing that and sort of talks her into it in a way. But there's that anyway, and as I said, that scene was quite well done. But the other big stuff is then this character of Jacky, who's like a cook on the ship. She gets quite heavily linked to what's going on and the Burke stuff, and it's because at one point when she's in the canteen, Amy sort of overhears her and another chef like graduating her, and that's because apparently something to do with the son. Her son, is getting released from somewhere or is coming home, and obviously they're overjoyed. And obviously you know there's going to be something to it, but anyway, it's like Amy sort of follows up on that and sort of questions her a bit, and she says that, well, my son's getting released from like an Indonesian prison. He's been there a while, so that's why I'm so happy. And Amy sort of prods a bit further, tries to get like more details about what exactly happened, and the chef Jacky just gets really paranoid and defensive and kind of like sort of makes up an excuse and like leaves. And what sort of happens is then when Amy is talking later on to someone else, she finds out then the son was in on drug charges and he had a 10-year sentence, and they applied for parole, and after he's only been there a year. So Amy's like, oh, okay, that's a bit suspicious. Why would they let him out after only 1 year of a 10-year sentence? So later on, again, sort of convenient, you have like the ship having like a malfunction or something dramatic happening on deck, and this causes a distraction, and Amy like sneaks out of her cabin and she goes to like the cabin of Jacky and starts searching around, and she finds that substance that then was found on Burke, and she like brings this to the captain and convinces him that this could be something serious. So he calls her to the bridge, but she never shows up, and Amy goes looking, and she's told by someone else that the coxswain went looking for Jacky. So, not surprisingly, Jacky shows up dead. So it appears as though the coxswain is looking a bit shady, because it certainly looks like he might have been the one that took her out. But in any case, we sort of end with this dramatic scene, her finding Jacky, and then someone running at Amy, basically, like almost like football tackling her out. And I think we're meant to think that's like the coxswain, just like charging at her. But obviously it could be someone else, but he's the one obviously in the frame. So I guess we will see next week how some of this stuff adds up. But I'm not overly keen on the Jacky stuff and that development, just because it feels like the series just throwing a random name in there, and we've never seen this character before. We don't know much about her in this episode, and so it just has less impact because it's not a character we've spent any time with. And then suddenly she becomes quite a big part of the plot, or it appears as though she will be, or either her or whatever's been going on with her son. So that didn't do too much for me. So I much prefer the stuff on land in this episode. I much preferred the stuff with Kirsten than the stuff with Amy. But there you have it. That's the episode. I thought it was definitely better than last week's. As we got into some of the case stuff, things did get a bit more intriguing. Obviously, I'm still not bailed away by it, as you can tell, but it was better. So we've got 2 more left now, and we'll see how it goes. But let me know your thoughts on Vigil, on episode 4, in the comments below. Please like and subscribe, and you can share me out on social media as well. That helps a lot. And I'll be back with more Vigil next week. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.